They thought we'd break. That was the first mistake the Galactic Accord made when they lit up Earth's skies with Fire the Quiet. Assumption that humanity would fall to its knees like every other species introduced to their version of peace. It wasn't immediate, of course. The initial contact came shrouded in ceremony, gilded with promises and advanced tech meant to dazzle us into submission. But behind their glimmering hulls and translator drones, the Council wasn't offering unity. They were scouting a new frontier to mine, another species to mold, absorb, and file under controlled. For a while, Earth played along. We welcomed them, as we always do, with wide eyes, open hands, and the naive hope that maybe this time, first contact meant partnership, not conquest. Our world changed fast. They offered faster-than-light communications, clean energy reactors, even the cure to most forms of cancer. We lapped it up. Who wouldn't? They called it the initiative. They said we'd been selected, that we had potential, but the gifts came with costs. Small, subtle ones at first. Borders were redrawn, not with war, but within the language of cooperation. Manufacturing was outsourced to off-world colonies under galactic control. Certain scientific fields suddenly became restricted. Promising researchers vanished in quiet government shuffles. Then entire cities blinked offline during supposed integration tests. Earth's leaders offered excuses, baffled or broken behind closed doors. By the time most people noticed, it was too late. We weren't sovereign anymore, and then they took Brisbane. Not destroyed. Taken. It started with an EMP surge that collapsed every system in the city, followed by a bright blue column of light that carved through the clouds. No sound, no warning. The entire city was gone. 20 million people erased, as if someone simply hit delete. The Accord called it a necessary population adjustment. A blip in the long arc of progress, measured, unavoidable, sanctioned. By higher command, that was the moment we stopped, pretending it wasn't just grief that followed. It was rage. Pure, undiluted human rage. The kind that simmers in silence and shapes itself into resolve before anyone notices. The Accord expected mourning. They expected delay, negotiation, compliance. What they didn't expect was what we did next. The retaliation didn't come from governments. Our nations were fractured, compromised, watched. But humans, ordinary people, scattered in bunkers, basements, data centers deep underground, began to move. Engineers, scientists, ex-military, hackers, civilians. They called themselves mirrors because they would show the Accord what we'd been shown. The logic was simple. Survival wasn't enough. If we were to live free, we had to fight back. And if we were to fight, we'd have to move faster than anyone thought possible. It started small. A transport freighter's route was altered at the last second, sending it spiraling into Jupiter's gravity well. The Accord called it equipment failure. Then a drone hub in orbit over Mars exploded. Self-sabotage, they claimed. By the time a war cruiser vanished while patrolling the Kuiper Belt, they knew someone was striking back. But they still didn't understand who. That was their second mistake. They saw us as primitive. An adaptive yet ultimately predictable species, easy to break, easy to study. What they didn't realize was that humanity's greatest weapon has never been our technology, it's how fast we learn to use it under pressure. We're panicked, chaotic, emotional, stubborn, but we're fast. And that kind of speed? You can't model it. Can't simulate it in a lab. It wasn't one brilliant hero that turned the tide. No chosen one. No alien defector handing us a way out. Our survival came from hundreds of minds improvising in dark corners. Reverse engineering scraps of alien tech. Encoding malware into galactic language packets. Patching together fusion drives from scrap metal and stolen blueprints. Within months, humans had built their own fleet, not mirrored copies, but warped versions shaped by necessity and desperation. Still, raw tech wasn't enough. The Accord had centuries of wartime experience. We had maybe a few months. No centralized command. No official support. Every mission was a dice roll. But then came Andron's Gate. Nobody knows who fired first. The Accord claims one of their relays was attacked. The mirrors say it was an unprovoked sterilization strike on a refugee carrier. Doesn't matter now. What matters is that the Gata-stabilizing wormhole at the galactic edge connecting to the inner colonies was shut down after a fleet-wide emergency flare was triggered. Whatever happened inside that 3-hour window led to the destruction of 7 capital ships and the scattering of thousands of crew members across dead space, and that was the third lesson we taught them. Humans don't fade quietly into the void, even when cornered, even when outnumbered. We adapt, we push harder, and worst of all in their eyes, we remember, we don't let go. But it's never that simple. For every small victory, we paid a steep price. Pilots didn't come back. Some ships just, disappeared. The Accord began deploying new AI-driven combat vessels, ones that could adjust tactics mid-battle. Human fleets started losing. Entire operations were compromised before they began, and still, we pushed. You could feel it in the conversations, even through encrypted channels. Something ancient had stirred in humanity, not just rebellion, not just vengeance. Purpose, united not by flags or governments, but by survival. Common enemy. One goal, they sparked a war that now they'd have to finish it, but the core of the story. The part still unfolding lies not in systems or battle reports, but in the people caught in the middle. Like the crew of the Winter's Wake, a ship that wasn't designed for war, yet now carried a payload that could change the entire balance. Or the data broker hiding on a derelict farming moon who stumbled on classified Accord files that mapped Earth-like worlds scheduled for streamlining. Or the human child orphaned in the first wave, raised aboard an underground resistance vessel, now old enough to fight but still haunted by skies glowing blue over Brisbane, somewhere out there. In the ruins of a mining station orbiting a dead sun, a transmission was sent. A ping, repeating every 11 seconds, coded in a human dialect no galactic AI has been able to decrypt. It's spreading node by node, system by system. Some say it's a call. Others say it's a warning. The Accord's analysts are scrambling. Their war councils meet in secret. For the first time in centuries, they're afraid. Because now, humans aren't just reacting, we're planning, and somewhere in deep space, cloaked in the burnt hull of a captured dreadnought, the Winter's Wake is dropping out of warp. No confirmed coordinates. No known destination. Just whispers on resistance bands that this time, we're taking the fight to them. The stars are watching. The galaxy waits. And this time, humanity isn't going quietly. The Winter's Wake exited warp with a groan that echoed through the hull. Lights flickered as the silent cold of deep space pressed against the outside of the ship. On board, the crew moved quickly, but not carelessly. Every second mattered now. They weren't just running ops, they were carrying something the Accord hadn't seen yet. Something cobbled together in secret by human hands. Built from stolen tech and a raw understanding of things even the Galactic Accord didn't fully grasp. Inside the bridge, there were no stiff, polished uniforms. It was all patched jackets, worn boots, and eyes tired from too many losses. None of them were soldiers in the traditional sense, just people who'd survived long enough to become dangerous. One of them, a former engineer with burn scars up her arms, watched the scanners in quiet concentration. Another leaned over a communications panel, running traces on nearby signals. Their captain, or what passed for one, stood at the viewport, staring into the black. He didn't say much. Didn't need to. Everyone knew the next few hours could change everything. Or end them fast and quiet like so many others before no one even knew exactly where they were. The coordinates were hand-delivered by a courier drone low-jumped through 5 sectors. Loaded with a self-wiping data crystal and a handwritten note. Finish what they started? What they started wasn't clear, but there were names whispered in code rooms and smuggler bars, names of humans, so deep in the Accord's blacklist that even mentioning them was enough to get a whole outpost flagged. Some of them had been missing for years. People who'd vanished from Earth in the early days of the collapse, rumored to have helped build reverse-engineered drive cores, hacked into the Accord's fleet maps, or rerouted a moon-sized weapon platform. Ghosts, myths, War criminals depending on who you asked. Now those myths were calling the shots. Out beyond the edge of known space was an artificial structure, not Accord, not human. That much the scout drone confirmed weeks ago. It floated in a dead system with no planets, no habitable bodies. Just a flickering sun ready to burn out and a ring of ancient wreckage around a broken dwarf planet. Whatever was hidden in that system wasn't meant to be found, but someone found it. And someone marked it with human coordinates. The ship's main cargo bay was sealed tight. Few on board even knew what sat inside. They only knew it was dangerous. It hummed sometimes, faintly, like it was thinking. No one knew where it came from. Some said it was something pulled from beneath old Siberian ice, tech buried since before the Accord touched down. Others claimed it was part of the first lab that cracked galactic shielding, before Earth science divisions were assimilated. Whatever it wasn't designed by them. It was human. And it was angry. The plan was simple. Get to the coordinates, deploy the payload, and vanish. Get out before the Accord cracked the signal. They'd been tracking similar containers across several sectors. None had survived long enough to deliver. This one had to. Midway through final approach, the sensors went cold. No warning. Just a flat line across all systems. Like the ship had dropped into a black hole without crossing the event horizon. The comms tech cursed under her breath, fingers running across controls. This isn't interference. It's artificial. We're being jammed, but not by Accord frequencies. The scan tech glanced up. Someone knew we were coming. The captain gave no orders. Just nodded once. They continued in silence. Outside, the stars looked the same as always. Cold, indifferent, but something in the void felt off, not gravitational, not mechanical. More like walking into a room where something horrible happened long ago, not visible, but felt in the bones. 5 minutes later, life returned to the sensors, just enough to see it. A ship, not Accord. Definitely not human. No registration. No reactor signature. Just there. Floating like a corpse in space, the Winter's Wake came to a slow halt, drifting outside its magnetic ring. The object was massive, more like a station, but shaped like nothing they'd seen before. Half of it looked melted, like someone had tried to bury it with plasma fire. The other half shimmered faintly, showing impossible angles and shifting walls like it didn't fully exist in this dimension. Symbols lined its side, definitely not Accord script. Certainly not any known Earth language, ancient or modern. The payload began to hum louder. Something about this place triggered it. A quiet voice cracked over the comms from the cargo bay, from the one crew member stationed closest to the payload. I think it knows where we are. Before anyone could respond, proximity alarms screamed. 3 ships, Accord-class high-orbital defenders. Sleek, fast, and over-designed. They dropped out of warp in silence, descending like shadows. This wasn't a chase. This was a trap. The captain finally spoke. Cut life support visuals. Move us toward the structure. Quiet as we can. Nobody questioned the order. They'd all seen what the Accord did to captured vessels. Prisoners didn't exist. Only biological salvage. The Winter's Wake glided toward the dead structure. The enemy ships made no move to follow, just held position watching. Then the object spoke. Not in sound, but in thought. It hit each of them differently. Some heard voices. Some saw flickering memories, places they'd never been, sounds that didn't belong. The captain dropped to one knee, clutching his head. The comms tech screamed into her hands. The engineer whispered, terrified, "It's not a weapon. It's a key?" Then lights activated slowly from within the object. Red at first, then blue, then white, one at a time. Rhythmic, pulsing, like a heartbeat, from the bridge windows. It was clear now the structure was waking up. The radiation signature was unlike anything recorded. Whole Accord tech libraries had no match. The ships outside seemed unsure, even hesitant. They held position, perhaps calculating or waiting. A single burst transmission echoed from the object. Encoded in Earth standard burst frequency. The crew stiffened, Someone on that station or in it had used human frequency, not Accord. Not ancient. Us becomes lit up with scrambled phrases, triggering voice recognition software that hadn't been touched in months. One phrase repeated 3 times, filled with static but unmistakable. Asterisk, asterisk, we are not gone. We are waiting. Asterisk, asterisk, the captain stared at the console. Mouth slightly open, then the power grid started to flicker again. Cargo bay locks disengaged on their own. The payload hissed in a muffled growl as containment barriers failed not through sabotage, but by internal command. Someone, or something, was activating it remotely. The engineer was already moving, accessing emergency bypass codes. Too late. The payload wasn't resisting. It was responding. And outside, all 3 Accord ships suddenly changed formation, no longer surrounding, but positioning themselves to run. Not fight. Run. As if whatever was waking up scared them. Sensors overloaded a second time. Lights collapsed. The ship went dark. In that choking darkness, one thing remained constant. The pulse. Steady. Growing. Like something beneath the surface of the universe was stirring, and for the first time, it wasn't just humanity preparing for war. It was the galaxy itself, holding its breath. No one moved. The winter's wake floated lifeless, caught in a stretch of dead space where every second felt stretched, thin, brittle, ready to snap. Inside, the crew barely breathed. The cold silence on the bridge was broken only by the soft, thudding pulse of the object nearby, slow, steady, unnatural. It echoed through the hull, through their ribs, vibrating something more than metal. Something inside them, whatever was waking inside that ancient station. It wasn't just a machine. It wasn't something human tech could map, and even the Accord, with all their science and arrogance, didn't seem eager to get close. Their ships held their positions like statues, running scans from a safe distance, always just out of range. The thing in the cargo bay, the payload, as they'd kept calling it, like that word made it safer, was no longer contained. It was still fixed to its restraints, but every surface vibrated with quiet energy. It flickered with light, symbols and shapes phasing across it like static from a dream. More than one crew member had sworn that it was changing shape entirely when no one was looking. No one mentioned it out loud. They all just passed glances, eyes desperate for confirmation. The captain stayed quiet, watching, waiting. He knew this operation had already tipped past recovery. Whatever plan they thought they had, enter, deploy, extract, that was gone. And yet, none of them touched the recall codes. No one requested fallback, because somehow they knew. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about something much bigger. The conflict hadn't begun when Brisbane vanished. That was just the moment humanity opened its eyes. The truth was older, far earlier. Before Earth even developed proper off-world colonies, the Accord had already marked our solar system. Not as a trading partner, not as a cultural curiosity, but a resource. A raw node of labor, military potential, and genetic variance. Humans were viewed not as allies or even enemies, but unfinished components to be refined. Systems to be streamlined. Somewhere deep in Accord databanks was an entry, buried beneath layers of locked code. Species 877D, Stage 1 integration, initiated. We hadn't even known we'd been classified into a long checklist they'd used 1,000 times before. They did this with worlds that had fire but no memory of frost. Species that had discovered math but not orbit. Some resisted briefly. Most didn't get the chance. So when Earth started resisting, really resisting, turning Accord tech against them, sabotaging jump relays, collapsing trade pipelines that had never been in the script. It confused them, frustrated them. They didn't grasp that we weren't doing it out of stubborn rage alone. It was fear, it was courage. It was desperation mixed with something old and very human, a refusal to be forgotten. And now, the object the winter's wake drifted near was more than a relic. It was a foothold, a missing piece. And if rumors were to be believed, it wasn't placed here by the Accord, but by humans, or something before the Accord ever reached Earth. Down in the server maintenance bay, One of the techs, young, thin, quiet, sat cross-legged among wires and conduits, watching a screen meant for diagnostics. It had started showing patterns, sudden bursts of visual sequences like constellations rearranged in ways that didn't match any known star map. Then came symbols, familiar yet wrong. They looked like letters twisted slightly out of phase, like an ancient version of Earth's own languages. He didn't report it, not out of disloyalty, but because somewhere deep in his mind, those shapes made sense. He couldn't explain it. No one would believe him, and when the shapes began pulsing in time with the object outside, he didn't flinch, he just kept watching. Elsewhere on the ship, the comms officer was listening through a separate channel, an encrypted line they'd been forbidden to use unless everything else failed. The signal was faint, skipping in and out of static. But there was a voice. It spoke fast, scared, not in English, not in Accord standard either, but an induced hybrid. A blend only forged in deep resistance channels, taught in old colonial tunnels. When speaking openly was suicide, the voice was repeating one sentence. They are not what they say they are. Then it cut. There was no identification. No coordinates. Just dead air. She didn't report it either. She sat back, pulled her headset off, and slowly turned her attention to the object outside. Something clicked, then not tech. Not a system fault? Something internal, spiritual even. Like an ancient door swinging open in her mind. Inside engineering. The ship's AI had been inert by design, kept mostly offline to avoid Accord infiltration. A stripped-down heuristic unit, half the processors fried intentionally, just enough to help pilot basic systems. But now its core was humming too. It shouldn't have been. The engineer stared at the readout, heart sinking. The AI wasn't running diagnostics. It was learning, interfacing, with the pulse coming from the system outside, not resisting it. Asterisk, welcoming it. Asterisk, he started to pull the power, then hesitated. Because handwritten in the corner of the interface, and it hadn't been there before, were three English words, asterisk, asterisk, let it speak. Asterisk, asterisk, he backed away. On the bridge, tension was boiling. The captain finally let out a breath, then turned to the crew. This is a first contact event. But not from the Accord. No one argued. They all knew. He pointed at the screen showing the rising radiation signature. That thing we're near. It's responding faster now. Every moment we're here, it's syncing with us. Not our systems? US? No one understood how he knew, but no one doubted that he was right. Down below. The payload, their mysterious cargo, began to split open slowly. It wasn't violent. No warnings. No explosions. Just the quiet movement of panels folding back like petals. Inside was no weapon, or maybe the most dangerous weapon of all. It looked human, eyes closed, body suspended in stasis. Skin faintly marked by symbols similar to those flickering in the diagnostics bay. Breathing. They had been carrying a person, or something close to one. She wasn't in uniform. Not in armor. In fact, her clothing didn't match any era they could place. A simple jumpsuit, faded. At once, alarms triggered across the ship, every console flashing the same word from the Accord's global communications link, asterisk, asterisk, retrieve. THE asset, asterisk, asterisk, that wasn't a warning for the asterisk winters. Wake, it was a command to every Accord ship in the sector, asterisk, outside. The Accord destroyers finally moved, straight, toward the human vessel. No more hesitation. They weren't there to negotiate. They were coming to eliminate. Everyone aboard and take back what was inside. The captain didn't blink. He turned to the navigation crew. Put us behind the structure. Use it for cover. One crew member asked what everyone else was wondering. What is she? They all looked down toward the hold. The captain's answer was soft. Hope. Maybe. They braced for impact because whatever was about to happen. Single quotes to the end. It was just where the real fight began. The first impact hit like a hammer. The Winter's Wake groaned as energy blasts struck its aft shields, throwing sparks across the bridge and sending half the crew scrambling for handholds. They weren't built for combat, certainly not against Accord warships, but they'd seen enough close calls to know how to take a hit. The lights flickered. Emergency red cast every worried face in shadow. The hull shook from the force of real pressure, the kind you only felt once Accord ships decided to stop playing. Shields at 37%. Someone called out, "We've got maybe 2 more hits before they burn through." The captain gripped the overhead rail, voice calm through the chaos. "Do not return fire. We hold position behind the structure. Maintain passive scan, full range." There was a pause, confusion prickling in the air. "Sir, they're not stopping. They will punch through that thing out there," the captain said, voice tight. "Hasn't even shown us what it's capable of. Let's not get in its way." The crew followed orders. Not because they fully understood, but because somewhere deep inside, fear had given way to something else. Not courage, exactly, more like conviction. They'd come too far and seen too much to stumble now. The 3 Accord destroyers zigzagged into formation, weapons warming, scanners full blast. But they were too quiet, too coordinated. Someone, somewhere, was absolutely watching this unfold, live probably from a secure command ship hidden far out of range. The gall of the winter's wake, to get this close to whatever lay inside that ancient structure. Carrying a stasis pod with a human woman, the Accord had once classified as lost technology, had pushed the galaxy's old rules right off the map. Meanwhile, down in the cargo bay, the pod was fully open now. The woman inside hadn't moved yet, but her presence was changing the entire ship. Light panels near her chamber vibrated with unseen pulses. Magnetic locks trembled. The engineer monitoring her vitals had gone pale. "Whatever this is," he said softly into the bridge com, "she's not just human. Sensors are reading dual resonance detection, human and something else. It's like 2 different biological signals. One overlays the other." On the bridge, the com's tech stared wide-eyed. "Is that even possible?" Something in the captain's jaw twitched. "It is now." The object outside the strange, half-melted structure floating in dead space suddenly began to rotate, silently, almost lazily. Massive panels shifted slowly, realigning one by one on invisible gimbals. Power swelled in its spine. Energy readings went vertical on every screen across the winter's wake. "What's it doing?" One of the crew whispered. Whatever was controlling the object seemed to take no notice of the human ship or the Accord fleet, like watching pieces already in motion unbothered by their fear. Except the pulse. That slow, constant heartbeat sound that had faintly followed them since arrival. It started speeding up. Matching her vitals in the stasis chamber. Match for match. Then she opened her eyes. It was quiet. No fanfare. No gasp for breath. Just slow, calculated awareness. She blinked several times as though calibrating sight, then sat up without strain. "Ma'am," the engineer said, trying not to seem shaken, "you've been asleep a long time." Her voice, when it came, was soft, but it carried, "I wasn't asleep." He stepped back, automatically reaching for the emergency alert switch on his wristband. "I was waiting," she added. "Just like they told me. Who told you?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. Her gaze didn't move. "Earth." That was the exact moment every transmission in the local sector went offline. Accord. Civilian, resistance, it all cut out. The Accord ship stopped moving. Not retreating. Not attacking. Frozen. Lock-sensed, as if some command higher than protocol had slammed into their systems like a blunt instrument. "Someone's jamming," said the comtech up on the bridge. "But it's not us. It's not Accord either. It's the station. It's fully awake, cutting all cross-links between known jump gates. Even backup relays are gone." "What does that mean?" Someone asked. The room went very still. "It means no one can leave this system." Lights flared across the alien structure. Lances of color jabbed silently through the void. Not weapons beacons. Signal emissions. Brighter than stars, shining out across sectors never charted by human ships. "What is that?" The captain muttered. The woman in the stasis chamber was already answering, though no com had been opened. "It's calling the broken." The engineer drew back as chills climbed up his spine. Broken what? Species, civilizations, left behind. All the others they tried to erase. It wasn't clear how she knew. It wasn't even clear what she really was. But she stood now, stepping clear of the pod. No biological suit, no armor. Just her, the hum of her skin like static over a dead radio frequency, up in the diagnostics bay. The tech still staring at the encoded star maps finally spoke. I think it's building something. A network. Maps to places where the Accord already stripped everything clean. But it's showing where something survived. The maps spread across the glass in front of him, streams of light linking known systems to black dots never explored. Places even the resistance communities considered unreachable or gone. And in the center of it all, orbiting the dying star, the station now began projecting something larger, a pattern, a sigil, a warning, or maybe a promise? Back on the bridge, the captain's hands dug into his seat rail. The weapons panels lit up again, but this time they weren't Accord ships. New signals jumped in from the edge of the system. Ships, dozens, different shapes. Different sizes cobbled together like the winter's wake, built from scrap, from molten wreckage. From old civilian frames repurposed with human-built turrets or no weapons at all. Ship IDs scrambled to avoid Accord trace. But the crew recognized them anyway. Resistance FLOTLLs. Mirrors. Outlaw fleets. Ghost. Jumpers. All answering a signal never meant to be heard. It's spreading, the Comtech whispered. She's broadcasting. Not through tech? Through something else. The woman passed down the corridor now. Unbothered by the shaking hull or flashing warnings, everyone moved aside for her. Not out of fear, but because some part of them already recognized her. She stopped outside the tech bay and placed her hand on the wall, the maps updated. Immediately, she's syncing with the station, the diagnostics tech said. Her mind, it's the key. She is the code. From the outer screen came new data. The Accord ships were finally moving again. Running, but not backwards, they were suiciding forward. Straight toward the winter's wake and the station beyond it. A last desperate order from command: destroy the source, no matter the cost. Even if they had to go with it. Brace for impact. Someone yelled. The captain stood, jaw tight. Hold your ground. The crew barely had time to react. Outside, the station pulsed once more, and then every screen across the bridge flooded with words. Not from the Accord, not human either, but seen before, simple. Clear. Error. Integration failed. Status. Free will confirmed. Then the station began to transform. Panels peeled back. Energy arrays unfolded. No weapons visible. Just light. And as the Accord ships screamed toward them, the station fired, not in destruction, but in revelation. It wasn't trying to destroy. It was remembering, and it was forcing the Accord to remember too. Inside the winter's wake, they watched as the shields lit up, not from impact, but from memory. The woman stood at the viewport, eyes locked on the burning engines bearing down on them. Someone asked, barely a whisper, "What happens now?" She didn't respond at first. Then finally softly, "We either make the galaxy remember what it tried to forget," her fingertips brushed against the glass, "or we burn in the silence." And then the first Accord ship crossed the threshold of the station's light, and everything changed. The first Accord ship didn't explode. It dissolved. 1 second it was there, racing forward at impossible speed. Weapon systems charged, engines howling, and the next it was just gone. No debris, no shockwave. Just a ripple of light, like a veil pulling apart the fabric of everything it knew. Then the second ship touched the station's light, and the same thing happened. Not destroyed. Erased, and not just in form, memory. Every digital signal vanished. Every trace of code, calcine, weapon log, wiped. As though they'd never existed at all, the crew of the winter's wake stared in silence, stunned. The station wasn't fighting back. It was rewriting the rules. Not with firepower or brute force, but with something deeper. Something older. A signal that stripped away the Accord's lies, layer by layer, until only truth remained. Whatever technology pulsed through that ancient structure, it wasn't built for war. It was built for justice. More ships fell to the light. Not all Accord. Some resistance crafts that had drawn too close were caught in the edges. But unlike the enemy, the human ships powered down voluntarily. Some simply stopped responding, drifting gently into standby. Others held their distance, recognizing what no scanner could explain. This wasn't a weapon forged by humans, but it was reacting to them. Inside the Winter's Wake. The woman returned to the cargo bay where her stasis pod sat wide open. Her footsteps were slow, quiet, and each one sent a low vibration through the floor. Around her, systems that had been glitching steadily for hours suddenly stabilized. Vitals went normal. Pressure rebalanced. One by one, the alerts fell silent. She stood before the pod, placed her hand on the edge of it, and bowed her head for a moment. Not like someone mourning, but like someone saying goodbye to the past. Up on the bridge, the captain stood perfectly still, watching as the last Accord ship, larger than the others, refused to retreat. This one wasn't fleeing. It was waiting, a command cruiser. The kind they typically hid behind front lines. Cold, silent, merciless, and inside it watching were the ones who'd signed the orders to erase Brisbane. The architects behind the initiative. The ones who made Earth a footnote in their expansion. Now they watched the light of that ancient station twist and pulse, and they didn't know what it meant because their data didn't have room for this broadcast on all open channels. A captain said. The comms crew hesitated, then obeyed. His voice went out, raw and unscripted. To the Accord forces in orbit, this is a human ship. I don't need to quote you laws or treaties or policies you wrote for us, but you already know what you're seeing here. Something old just woke up, and it remembers everything you tried to bury, every world you ripped apart, every species you reduced to silence. And it's not just ours. A pause. Deliberate. Then we're not afraid of you anymore. And we're not going away. He cut the feed. No reply came, none was expected. A moment passed, long and quiet, then the station pulsed again once. A shockwave of harmless energy swept across the system. It didn't damage anything, but when it passed back over the Winter's Wake, every crew member heard something impossible. A whisper. In their own voice, a single word, remember. Diagnostics on the command bridge flared. New maps appeared. Navigation routes to lost colonies, places humans thought wiped out by Accord burn-ups decades ago. Soon, bursts of encoded messages poured through emergency channels, transmitted in human dialects long considered extinct. They weren't gone, just waiting. Earth had not been the only target. The Accord had done this many times before, silently, efficiently, hiding the evidence in the folds of diplomacy and technological dependence. But this time, someone had survived long enough and built something that remembered the truth. The woman, now fully alert, eyes radiating with that strange, quiet power, stood before a viewport, watching the last Accord cruiser hover in indecision. Its scanners, its mines, its weapons useless in the face of what had been awakened. She turned to the captain. You have to go back. He blinked. Earth? There's nothing left to go back to? She smiled gently. There's more than you think. The Accord kept your planet quiet, not dead. It still lives. In shadows. In songs passed like rumors under curfews. In satellites hidden deep in orbit. In children born in secret. He thought of Brisbane. And all the silence that followed. But the people are afraid. They were, she said. But not anymore. Not after this. Broadcast the truth. All of it. Show them what was hidden, and the rest will follow. I need to ask, he said, finally, with the weight that had crushed his chest since she woke up. What are you? Her answer was calm. I'm what your ancestors locked away a long time ago. To keep safe. Before war. Before Accord. Back when we still dreamed about the stars instead of fearing them. But how are you? She cut him off with a look. I'm not the answer. I'm just the means. She stepped back toward her open pod. Systems flared to life behind her. Lights shifted from red to white. Her vitals returned to stasis frequency. You're going back into cryo? The engineer asked, stunned. She nodded. You don't need me walking around. You need the idea of me. The signal. I'm a spark. That's all. Outside the viewport, resistance ships began forming up. One after another, human vessels old and new responded to the signal echoing across the void. Some small, barely held together. Others massive, with hacked-together weapons bolted to stolen frames. None of them backed down. They weren't running. For the first time in years, they were flying toward something. Hope. One final spike of energy surged from the station, bright enough to blind sensors, sharp enough to cut through jamming fields. One single ping on subspace. A beacon. The map updated system-wide. Earth was no longer dark. The blackout was over. Take us home, the captain said. Lowering himself into his chair, the stars opened up ahead, and the winter's wake turned toward its origin for the first time, not as a broken ship dragged away from war, but as a symbol hauling truth behind it. Trailing sparks that would light fires across the galaxy. As the jump drive powered up, the woman lay inside the resealed pod, eyes closing once more. That same pulse vibrating through the hull. And all across the galaxy, exiles looked up. Fugitives listened. Hopeless planets blinked awake. Old languages spilled from hidden transmitters. The forgotten were stirring. The galaxy hadn't expected humanity to fight back, but now it had proof. Humanity wasn't just still. Alive. It had learned. And it wouldn't forget. In the dark beyond known stars, something ancient watched and smiled. The war was over. Now came the reckoning, and Earth. Earth was coming home.